differences, or one of the facts to following the previous discussion is that not everyone are interested in biology. There are many people, they come from different backgrounds. For example, myself, I came totally from the effort of changing a society, changing China. I came because there's a lot of terrible things going on. And as a young teenager, I decided that I need to do something. So that's nothing related with biology, sociology, but it's everything needs to be considered, multidisciplinary. So there are several terms telling about a situation different from what Boris said. It's interdisciplinary first, and then it's that's cross-disciplinary second, and they are transdisciplinary. And so that's how I landed up in the landscape of cybernetics, because I found cybernetics is cross and transdisciplinary. So here, the first slide, I think after I received the 20 questions from Boris, come to my mind a few books. This one, Purposive Systems, is the first annual conference of American Society of Cybernetics. So you see that purposive behavior in not only biological, but also psychological and social, and even political systems are being paid attention to, represented by this book. I checked out the internet. This book is now selling for $350 US. Oh
my goodness!
I don't know why, but it's funny. But that is the milestone, because this society for American Society for Cybernetics is established. This is their first book. Now, this one, anticipatory systems. Notice the keyword is changed from a purposive to anticipatory. So it is more than purposive, right? It included a prediction. And this is the first book edited by IFSR, International Federation of System Research. And this one is in I think it's 1981. So 1960 something, this is 1980 something. And later, this one, Self-Organization and the Management of Social Systems. The book series edited by Hagen, the founder of Synergetics. But in this book, this is their first volume of this series. Oh, no, sorry. This is the very last volume. I got it turned around. But Hans von Forst had a very important paper included in this book. It's the first one. He was talking about the self-organization. So coming back to what Boris just covered. From Wiener, Ashby to Maturana, blah, blah, blah. They focused on the internal homeostasis mechanisms, what you say, essential variables. But in my opinion, we cannot stay only in that area, because if you're stuck just inside that area, you will inevitably have a conclusion that there is a God who made the decision, who designed all this system. And the God set that thermostat for all the essential variables. And that could not be satisfying answer for the scientists. Therefore, they start shifting their focus from the controlling mechanisms to the question, who set of those goals. Who decided that the variable is in this range is essential, beyond this range is problem? Who made that decision? So that is the big turn for the attention towards self-organization. Okay, that was what I learned during my school years, doing PhD from 1990 to 1995. So the last one here is my work. This is a back cover of a journal published in Hong Kong. What are these fancy little diagrams? I'll tell you later. But it captures the essence that Hans von Forest first mentioned in his self-organization paper, the concept of eigenvalue. Okay, so the idea of eigenvalue, well, I'll talk about that later, but because the questions I received from Boris is about human nature. So I asked my two assistants about the definition of human nature. Charlie says, I asked for 10 definitions. So Charlie means ChatGPT. He gave me these definitions of human nature. And Ben is Bot, okay. So another AI engine. So give me another 10 definitions. So here on this screen, you have plenty different definitions of human nature. Which one is right? Which one is wrong? How do you measure it? Okay, so for a cybernetician, we have to pay attention to all of them. We have to pay attention to all of them. So Boris mentioned one possible answer is about selfishness. Somebody mentioned the self gene in the previous talk. I would agree with that because selfish comes from very, very far back of life form. All life form belongs to something biologists called heterotroph. Heterotroph type that will eat other kind of life form. So the selfishness is from a very early days, like 3.5 billion years ago, when a life form formed. The other type of life is called the autotroph. Autotroph means they don't have to eat others. They can just live on sunlight, CO2, and water, and some non-organic minerals. That's the lower, or what they call, it depends, it developed into plants, whoever, all the life form that can live by themselves without eating others. But unfortunately, we human belongs to animals. We have to have food. So having to have food, and we have to develop a neural system. Peter will agree, to hunt, right? To hunt or escape the fate of the being eaten. So that might be some physical answer, but for us cybernetics, we pay attention to more abstract level. Or if you are a photographer, you use more wide angle lens instead of very narrow lens to see the very much detail there. Of course, we need experts to work on those details, but we also need a wide lens to see the whole forest instead of just a tree. So Boris sent me that 20 questions. I studied a little bit, I reorganized it a little bit, and realized there are actually just two questions. One is about origination, ontogenesis, how this thing come into being, including human nature. And the others is about diversity. Why so different? So in Boris's 20 question, he used 33 words of difference, either difference, different, differently. I counted this. So he was actually asking, in my mind, he was actually asking how the diversity emerges. So my presentation is going to address this just 2 instead of 20. And I do not agree with the reductionist perspective. I do not agree that we need to open all the black boxes to the level of cells or bacteria. Yeah, my perception of reductionism works only in nearby levels. Not all the way up, all the way down, just neighboring levels. Reductionists make sense. So in those diversity question raised, we had some work named communicatics, paying attention to the difference of people from NP Myers-Briggs type indicator to the 5 different social styles. And we had a 5-finger theorem to alert people when having communication difficulty, we must be paying attention to 5 areas. But that's a topic of another session. We also have a diversity from a developmental stage, because if people are focused on a different stage or dominated by different stage, and the diversity, it becomes nature. But mostly, I think to answer or understand those questions better, we need this thing I call multi-layer self-organization as an explanatory framework. This multi-layer goes beyond with a classic self-organization. He asked me once, what is a classic self-organization? So I use Ashby's definition of self-organization, and Forster's definition of self-organization, and Ilya Prigoghin's definition of self-organization, and Herman Harken's definition of self-organization. I use those 4 people there as classic because it's widely known, widely spread. A lot of students already know that. But the commonality is that all of them only explain one step, i.e. from a chaotic situation, getting into one type of order, and stay there. In Hans von Forster's term, is the ended up at its eigenstate. The system found an eigenvalue. So it's the eigenstate is a very interesting phenomenon that you can observe from various levels, from the cellular level, biological level, to psychological level, to organizational behavior, people's group behavior, and to sociology, and even to international relationships. So that's something cyberneticians are highly interested in. To explain a little bit more, this is my very, very early work, maybe I think 30 years ago or something, 1933, yeah, 30 years ago. Here is the very basic element of the feedback loop that you guys talking about today. So it can have engineering format, it can have beer more porous format, it can have ASCII format, and there are some literature in management science. People like I got Chris, and those people talking about the first level learning, second level. It's all can be condensed into this little circle here. So basically, Ashby's perception of self-organization is that organization comes from the unchanging laws operating on the state recursively. So when the time goes to infinity, the organization emerge. So his keyword is the unchanging law, unchanging principle, or unchanging algorithm. Now, von Forster shifted that concept into ways of interacting of he used that little magnetized cubes in box and shaking them. He used that you can call it a metaphor, you can call it a thought experiment, but that's a little bit different. So his perception is order must come from chaos. Chaos is not a bad word. Chaos means energy, random energy put into the system. So you cannot live without that random energy. Now, to Prigogine, his perception is more complicated than previous two. He focused on the certain patterns that appear in an area far from equilibrium. So his theory is called the dispersive system. And from here, the explanatory power to a lot of social phenomena emerges. So that's why back in China in 1980s, we paid attention to Prigogine first, before we know Ashby and von Forster. And later after Prigogine, there is a guy named Eigen. He come up even more complicated cycling mechanism, cycling dynamics to explain a good number of phenomena, including in biology and physiology. So in order to capture all this, I created this experiment. It's pretty simple and it can easily duplicate if you want. You use a video camera, which is generating an image for whatever it sees, and you send that signal back to your TV screen. So video camera is not looking for somebody else, it's looking for itself. And what happened is I got these pictures. These pictures comes from nowhere. They self-generated according to the parameters of the external light, the zoom power, the amplification parameter. They are all a whole set of parameters that decided the emergence of this kind of stuff. So I call it eigen mechanism. This is also another early work. I was trying to talk about a missing link in the table of rationalities. And here we have types of phenomena, trivial regularities, teleological phenomena, spontaneous emergence, cognition, knowledge, agreement, formation, and social construction. And we have conceptual tools from various disciplines to understand these phenomena. And from these tools, we have explanatory principles produced by the theories. And we have scientific enterprises and their branches here. Now, at the time of early 1990s, when I was in school, my realize was that there's two links for spontaneous emergence, because I just earlier I mentioned that we have to explain how those essential variables are set. Now the answer here tends to be the essential variables emerge from self-organization processes. Those who stable and survive emerge. Those who are not stable disappear. This is consistent with Darwin's evolutionary theory. So I put these two here. For the conceptual truths, we need to understanding spontaneous emergence. The tool needs to be the eigenloop. Okay, feedback loop, feed forward loop. And we have more, I have a feed up, feed down, feed left, feed right. They are all loop. As soon as you have a causality loop, you may or may not, fortunately you may have eigenvalue emerge. So that was in 1990s, middle 1990s. I think I took the torch from all the pioneers, eigenmechanism. Now, that eigenmechanism explained or answered the question of Boris's origination. Where does it come from? So all these different level of self-organized orders comes from eigenmechanism. And now the question for diversity, I have to invoke another guy. Okay, his name is Waddington. You know, in the scope of evolution theory, you have, of course, Darwin here, you have Lamarck here, you have Baldwin here. They are more or less talking about a similar thing, but in different perspectives. Now, Waddington is more interesting because it developed, he developed something called epigenetic landscape. Basically, the eigenvalue formed at some beginning stage, it could evolve onto different paths. And this explains why the initial, what's the name for that initial cell that doesn't have any function, but it's a general cell, stem cell, right? This is called stem cell. But it evolved, and the cell developed into different types of cells. So he discovered this thing called epigenetic landscape, which says interaction forming the eigenstate or eigenvalue comes from any initial stage, could take different ways. So one thing leads to another, they will end up in different states. In different states is the answer to Boris's question of diversity. And this can happen at almost every level of your concern. So this is another, if you just Google Waddington's epigenetic landscape, you got a lot of images explaining the idea. So this is more detailed already. So as cybernetician, I will suggest that we use something I call CybScope. It's a thinking tool, 4-dimensional system thinking, to help you see not only structure, but also culture and the procedure. So if you can see a complex system in the same time through 3 different angles, and you get a much better understanding of the system. The first I call structure is like Boris just mentioned, okay, you have a broken bone, so the doctor will do the measurement like this. It helps him to see what's wrong with the structure-wise. And also, Boris also mentioned this thing called the laboratory test, right? Laboratory test in this framework is the cultural dimension. It's all of those your essential variables, where they're located currently. So from there, you also get clues of what might be wrong. So you have clues from a structure dimension, you have clues from the cultural dimension, and the third thing is from a procedure dimension. Is that the movement correct? Is your bow moving smoothly? Is your flood move correctly? Is your heartbeat correct? Those definitely will involve the time dimension here. So my proposal for DST is if you could see things from all these 3 dimensions together, adding time, you understand the complex system better, including this thing called human nature. So my response, this is the answer to the origination question. I think the key would be multi-layer self-organization framework. The critical moment is that when single links of natural causality in physics, chemistry, biology, cytogenesis, talking about cells, physiology, neurophysiology, this brain comes into center focus. Psychology is stuff produced by that brain, right? And then sociology is the stuff produced by many, many brains put together, right? And you have economics, you have political science, international relations, etc. Finally, to the whole civilization evolution. All of these levels, they contain some natural causality that scientists already discovered. But once those causality linked back, feedback loops formed, once those chain linked into loops, then eigenstates that has certain stability can emerge. I say can emerge because in many, many cases, you don't have eigenstate. It's just unstable. And that stable eigenstate can solidify, can become the concrete level for the next level of self-organization to happen. So that's the idea of multiple layer self-organization in highly abstract form that answers Boris' question of where does that thing called human nature comes from. Now, the diversity question 33 differences in 20 questions. They're all about a question. I think the key is this thing called the stability study. So earliest one in engineering scope is Alexander Lyapunov. And later I just mentioned the Wendington. At the very beginning, when you have a chance to form an eigenstate, the random noise could influence, as you see at my little experiment, got a different kind of emergence. Why? Random noise. It's the very initial stage. And later, Lyapunov identified something he called potential function. It's highly mathematical, but you can imagine just a concurved little basin here, and you have a little steel bowl there. You have a bowl there, basically. The ball without the disturbance will stay at the lowest point of the basin. But if you have wind, disturbance, other interference, push on the ball, it will leave that original state. But once your disturbance is removed, the ball will come back. And that is also homeostasis, the concept of homeostasis. So Lyapunov, in rocket science, he worked very specific and very precise functions. So that's how the rockets and the SpaceX and missiles can fly to their target. Now that's about one particular point of a stable point. We also have this field called chaos theory, and it has a bifurcation diagram as its starting point. The bifurcation diagram tells you that you may lose a parameter change. When the parameter changes, you may lose your original stable state. The one stable state can become two can become 4, and it can enter into the chaotic situation if the parameter goes too far. So chaos theory and the Wendington landscape. So these will be my answer to Boris's 20 questions. And finally, to the levels involving our brains, I think you need to pay attention to something called synapse pruning. The synapse pruning is the process of your growing experience, your history of interacting with the outside world. And some of your neuron synapses got pruned because they're doomed to be not useful. And some of them got enhanced. That is also an answer about why people are so different, because their brain already wired and pruned differently. So that's about my answer. And this is the first chaos theory animation about the logistic map. You see, the formula is very, very simple. It's just to have one variable x, but it has a parameter k. And the loop is, you see that it's previous time, x at the previous time is a function, x is a function of its own previous status. So even an equation as simple as like this, you can have different situation of what kind of eigenvalue you get. Depends on the parameter k. Okay, so this a chaos area, and it becomes two stable states, one stable state, and jump into 2, 4, and also back to the chaos situation, all because of that mysteriously K. And mysteriously essential variable, if you like. So that's logistic map is one thing. The more complicated one is called the trust circuit. It has a little bit more variable than this. And the system can come up this kind of trajectory that you can say it is stable, but it's never the same. It's repeating itself, but never repeat to the previous. So that is about, yeah, I think a blank is my last one for today. If you're interested, I have extra here. The feedback and the feed forward, both negative and positive, these 4 areas are discovered by Wiener, Ashby, and all the first generation cyberneticians. But that was in 1940s. So even Powers had something in 1970s. Powers has died in about 10 years already, I guess. So today, I think what we have here are at least 12 different types of circularities. I had presented this 2 years ago, I think. Yeah, in Club of Remy. So that's all I have to say today. I see Jamie's hand is raised up. Question? Go ahead.
Yes, Jason, if you maybe could go back to that other slide that you had where you gave an overview of the different...
Which one?
It was a table. It was a table and...
This one?
No, it was a table, well, with multiple... Yeah, but the one before, I guess. The one before... No, it was a table where you say there is this, and then you had several, yeah, probably before this one, where you say spontaneous emergence on the table. On the table, it said spontaneous emergence. So, there's the reason I was hoping you could have this table in front of us. Do you remember the table that says here? Yeah. Okay, because I think this table is a wonderful table and I can really work with it. But at the same time, this puts me in an impossible double bind, or maybe not. It all depends on whether we consider ourselves good friends or not. So what you call spontaneous emergence, Karl Popper would say pen and paper. And so this with pen and paper for the last 1,000,000 years, dus our ancestors have been doing things and eventually they got something going. And so now we send men to the moon. So the whole concept of eigenvalue would be some complicated name for saying pen and paper all over the world. That's the way people get and join society. Now, here is the painful thing is, and it's not directed at you at all. It's just because you give this beautiful example of the camera looking at itself. That is the story of Narcissus, who is looking in the lake and seeing his own image, and he's just playing with the image of himself. And it is, as I see it, it's Freud who actually says If you play too much with your own image, and he uses the hydraulic machine metaphor, then you will explode. I mean, that is the schismogenesis or the positive feedback loops about which Bateson was talking about. So that I see what you are getting at is people need to get out of their head. And how can they get out of their head instead of just running around and coming up with other images of themselves? So that is the question, I think, that I cannot answer on my own. I mean, it is a group of us who needs to kind of say, how
it's a question worth another session.
Yeah, okay.
Write it down.
So
Write it down in a call for discussion. Then we can do another one.
All right, until the next session.
Jerry, you raise your hand.
Okay.
Jerry just disappeared. Okay, Boris, what do you want to say?
Hey, Jason, if I would have time, I would also presenting how physiological variables are inside limits and why are they inside
Your
limits.
voice is broken. You need to get closer to your microphone.
What you're not you don't hear me?
No, the voice is on and off. You need to adjust your microphone.
Maybe the connection is not good.
Better now.
Better.
Better.
Okay.
Go.
I just wanted to say, Jason, that physiological limits were hypotheses were made by Ashby and Powers that is creating organism, and your theory about self organization is probably good, but it's not based on epigenetics, but on genetics. So on DNA. DNA is producing organism. That you can find that millions of medical workers will prove you that genetic is forming organism and structure and organization. And also Maturana, it's with no problem. You will with biology, you will determine the genetics that which is.
Then you will have to study how DNA is formed. You will have to study how DNA comes into being.
DNA is the forming organism that is proved, and you can prove it any day. Go into one hospital and they will prove immediately how, with chemical reaction, DNA is forming cells and how cells are forming organism. That is no problem. Millions of men will prove immediately. But nobody will prove that epigenetics has something with that.
If I may interrupt for a moment, Boris, I think what you're doing now is you're making a philosophical statement in the language of biology. And if people would realize you were making a philosophical statement about analytic truths, then they would understand you. But as long as you keep on saying it in the language of biology, it comes across as nonsense, if I may be blunt. But if you say it as a philosophical statement, it becomes very important.
I don't know what you want to say, Margarita, but the fact is that there are, as Peter said, there are thousands of theories of neuroscience. There are, I don't know how many theories about that and about that. How will you determine which theory is right?
Okay, they call that in philosophy an analytic truth. And there happened a bifurcation. Yeah, no, there happened a bifurcation. Some people said,
Margaret,
yeah, can you let me finish, please?
Right. Which theory is right?
Please let me finish. Some people said we don't need analytic truth. We throw them out of the door. And that was Willard Orman Quine. And so now we have this problem. How do we talk about truth? And then there is Popper who said, let's think about it as Planet of the Apes. Dus there was a Planet of the Apes, and millions of years later, there was a concept of analytic truths. And that is what I'm proposing.
It's imagination. Margarita. It's not an imagination. Only if you have scientific proof, then you will see what it is. Jason, can you show this before slide of the bones and so on, which are Röntgen and that? One slide probably before. One slide before. Oh, this is it. Oh, no. Go back. No. Medical report. Okay, this is. Now, you said for yourself that you have to look inside the body. So you have the Röntgen pictures and so on. You have to have the internal picture of the body by a laboratory test and so on. This is what are scientific proofs, you know. This can't make two theories what is wrong. This is only one theory what is wrong. And on that basis, doctors decide how they will cure you. If you would have 1,000 theories, how would you be cured? You need, Margarita, you need scientific evidence to prove that you are right.
Peter.
Hi. Well, first, you know, people are routinely looking at genetic differences and the effects of genetic differences in identical twin studies, and there are probably thousands of identical twin studies. And then you know, people can control for different aspects of development. The epigenetics can be looked at. There are epigenetic markers that people are now looking at in the context of disease. And so there are observables that let you make models, you know, testable models of these things. It's not hopeless. And in fact, there's a whole army of people working on that every day. I just think, you know, there are testable models on various levels of detail, and the main thing is that we test our models empirically. You know, that somehow we test our models either for internal consistency, you know, and analytical coherence, or empirical efficacy in terms of predicting one set of observables from another. So I don't understand where this idea that you can't isolate those factors comes from. It's being done every day.
Jamie?
Margarita.
Peter, as I remember, you always say we're studying correlates. So I think the question is really, we all our models, they give us more information about correlation, but the real question is, how about causation? And I think the reason I brought up the limbic system, and then I'll show, for me, it puts an emphasis on social causation, emotional, that our emotions trigger us to do things, even if we're supposedly rational. There is still some emotion at work. That is all that I want to say.
Sure, I agree that there are multiple factors that influence our behavior. The correlates is when we go and we observe what the nervous system is doing. The initial stage of investigation looks for correlates, and then you do manipulations to look for causative factors. So, someone might find a correlation between a particular gene and a particular disease, let's say, but there may be environmental factors involved. So, if you look at identical twins who have the same genetics, but different, maybe different developmental histories. They can be identical twins that were raised in different families. Then you are eliminating some of the possible, common factor correlations that might be there. So correlation is just the initial stage of investigation, and then ideally, if one wants a causal models, and one wants to isolate the causal factors, then you do additional experiments that manipulate those things and see what happens. So there's no problem there, you know, but in the field of biology, it's hard because biological systems are complex and we don't have all the observables that we would like. But, you know, I'm constantly amazed by the number of observable quantities that they are coming up with every year. It's just pretty astounding what molecular biology has done. And neuroscience as well. People are recording from thousands of cells, you know, at once. So we should not be ignorant about what's going on in the particular fields. You know, in terms of the empirical data.
Peter, may I ask? You said genetic twins.
Yes.
So you think, as I do, that both twins were formed by the genetics? Is that true?
Sure.
Were you formed from the genetics?
It depends on what you mean by you.
But are we formed from the genetics?
I am a product of the genetics of epigenetic differences, history, my history of development. You know, my family, my culture. On different levels, I'm a product of all those things.
But you are a product of the genetics. Your structure is product of genetics. And you are at the same time, when you look in the mirror, you are Peter. Why you are everyday Peter?
I don't understand
why
the question.
You are not, today you are not Peter, and tomorrow you are gorilla. Why not?
Well, there's structural stability.
What is giving you structural stability? What is giving you structural stability?
The, you know, the self-production systems that are my body.
Yes,
the self-production systems that are my mind.
Well,
self-production.
Yes. Organizational continuity.
No.
Jamie, you raised your hand.
You said
Yes.
autopoiesis or self-production.
So, Boris,
what is self-producing you, Peter?
Boris, if I may say, when you were asking whether Peter wakes up as a cockroach or a gorilla, I see you talking about an analytic truth. So you're trying to establish with Peter, hey, Peter, is there something we can agree on? And I think if you would ask the question like that, hey, Peter, let's brainstorm and see, is there something that we 100% agree on? Then I think the conversation can become very productive.
Super.
Because then you will find out that actually Peter is also thinking in a functional way, but he just uses different words. So that's the reason I bring up philosophy as being useful.
Super. Margareta and Peter and Jason, can we agree that we are genetic products?
No, because I don't know what you mean by the word.
Let me practice my German. Let me practice my German. Worin man nicht sprechen kann, darüber muss man schweigen.
Okay, now translation.
I hope it's not what keeps mankind alive.
Darüber muss man schweigen. Well, I think we have enough time today. If you guys have more stimulated new ideas, just send me another call for discussion, and we can continue. But I think the major difference here is Boris wants to stay within the scope of biology and physiology, or even neurophysiology. But some of us would like to go beyond that. So that is okay. I mean, there is no right and wrong here for choosing what you are interested in. We are in a free society. Okay, next time, send me your calls, and we can see something in the next year.
Jason,
Thank you very much.
thank you for a bit.